Hello everybody, it's I, the Costume Corpsman, coming back from my second video. In this one we're going to talk about glues and adhesives. I've got a few samples set up here that I did yesterday and last night, and I've allowed them to sit overnight. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you each one and how it looks and works for certain types of materials. And hopefully this will help you understand a little bit more about glues and adhesives when you build your costumes and your cosplays, especially with your props. I even got a little gun here with various things glued on it using different ways, just to show you what type to and what type not to use. So sit back, relax, and we'll get this started. This is probably going to last time that you're going to see me for a bit. You're probably going to see my hands more, but I hope it helps you. So let's get started. Hi, welcome back everybody. Okay, so as you see here, I have several different glues in different piles. I have super glue, the Elmer's school glue, because that's pretty easy to get, and I've seen some people use them in their cosplays and costumes. Gorilla glue, which is an extremely heavy-duty industrial type of glue. Rubber cement, which is generally a universal go-to when it comes to building costumes and cosplays. And then we've got the ye olde hot glue, which is where we're going to start with today. Now, as you see here, what I did was I took two very common materials, well, three actually. Foam, what some people would call vinyl strapping. This is the same material like you see with the clips that people use for straps for bracers or for shields or even on pouches or whatnot. And then this other material here is like a cloth or a pleather, if you will. I actually cut it off of some boots. But the reason why I picked it was because it has a very good bit of malleability, and it also is extremely porous and absorbent, which is another thing that we need to talk about when we talk about glues and adhesives. So in this hot glue here, as you can see, I did this the way I did it because most of the time when I see people use hot glue, this is about what it looks like. Now, I wanted to simulate someone hot gluing one of these pieces of straps onto some fabric, and because of the simple fact is I see this quite a bit, and the problem is as you see, as I pull it, it's starting to separate, and it's not taking me a whole lot. What happens is hot glue is really not a good idea to use on anything that you would put a lot of stress or pressure on, anything that would be able to move and bend and become malleable over time. Because when you use hot glue, it heats up, it becomes a liquid, and then you use it and it winds up becoming solid again. And the problem with that is unless the material that you use is extremely porous, as you see here, it will eventually, as you saw, I worked that very lightly, and now it's just starting to just come off. And if you're using this as a strap and a pressure point to hold on to, like I said, like a bracer or a heavy shield or even something on a belt, it's going to come off. It's going to lift and separate and come apart on this. So now we're going to set this on the side. Now this one here is the same thing, hot glue, but on foam material. Now I wanted to give this the best opportunity that it had. I didn't want to show you this and make it seem like, oh, he's just going negative on it. So what I did is a technique that I encourage anyone who wants to use glues or adhesives on things that have a smooth or porous thing, is take a piece of sandpaper and rub it a little bit until it breaks up on the surface and winds up becoming a little rough. that gives the adhesive more surface and grooves to sit in and actually wind up creating a stronger bond. Doesn't work with everything. It works with some things though. So here we have the same material, the strap, but on this time it's on foam, which is what a lot of props, especially things like I said, like shielding and bracers, are made out of. And I let this sit overnight, and I actually messed with it just a few moments before I started to film, and as you see, there was already just some separation here. So what we're going to do is we're going to work this a little bit, which this pretty much simulates what would happen if you had foam or whatnot and you were wearing it and using it. And as you see, I'm pulling off these pieces on top a little bit here and there, and it's making these little pieces show up. So we're going to do this, and now we're going to see how it works. Oh, actually, that's got a little bit. There we go. So as you see, see it actually tore the material here and stuck to the glue there. That's not the foam. That's the foam that came off with the glue. The glue actually pulled that. But once again, if this was a pressure point, or if this was a part that saw a lot of stress, this is what you would eventually have to do. And this is one of the things I said about the cosmic rules of cosplay. Test, test, test. This is why. Like I said before, sometimes you have to use what you've got on hand. And if hot glue is what you have or what you can afford and you use it, it's fine. There's ways that you can make hot glue work, not on a permanent basis, but even temporary. Like I said, using the sandpaper to rough up the material, using things that are a little bit porous, letting it sit really well, using a gratuitous amount. As you see here, this is not clean by any stretch of the imagination. So if this was going to be an unseen type of situation, this would work out well. But that's about what you see. And then what I have here is some hot glue on just two regular foam pieces. And, you know, I use this over amount. Somebody say, man, that's a terrible, he used a gratuitous amount or a lot. I did this because I wanted to simulate what I see a lot when I'm doing costuming and repairs. And I'm so sorry for the low quality of the video here. Like you, I'm using what I have, which is a web camera. But I'm hoping that you can get an idea of what I got here. So this is just hot glue I used on a couple of pieces of foam. And I'm not using a lot of pressure, but as you can see, it pulls apart. And I've actually seen this type of technique used. People get a couple pieces of straps, they glue them, and they use them for bracers or parts to use on props on their arms or whatnot, or even on their legs. And unfortunately, this is what happens. Hot glue is also not an evenly based adhesive. It tends to, like I said, it flows. See, you couldn't equally distribute it around, and it creates pressure points. And not only that, but a lot of foam too, when you use hot glue, believe it or not, depending upon how hot the temperature is, when it falls onto the foam, it actually melts it a little bit and actually weakens it. So it can create less surface for it to hold on to. So that's hot glue. And now we're going to set those around, and I'm going to get the next one set up. All right, everybody. Now we're going to talk about super glue. So super glue is a incredible material, an incredible adhesive to use. What I generally use is the Bob Smith Industries Maxicure, which you can get on Amazon. And also I use the Quick Cure stuff for it. It's called InstaSet. But those are the things that I use, plus other ones too. But those are the main ones that I use. When I go out and I do cons and I have super glue on me, that's the brand and the InstaSet stuff that I use. That way I can apply the super glue and then use the InstaSet, and it automatically starts to work on it. So for this particular, for super glue, I use super glue on the strapping and the foam, and on 2 pieces of fabric, and then on fabric and strapping. And the reason why I used it in this particular instance, because when it comes to super glue, these are the primary ways that I see. And so we're going to start with the super glue on the foam and on the strapping. Now, right off, you can tell that if you're going to be using super glue on foam for, let's say, like costuming, right off the bat, you can see there it gets really hard and rigid. And then when you start to bend it, because this is what happens, if you use foam, you're going to wind up having some give and take. It's going to become warped or whatnot as you work it, whether you sit down, you stand up, whether you pack it or not. And then you see it gets to a point, especially on the edges, and it's loosening up, it's starting to break apart. And I'm not going to pull it too hard because I don't want you to say, oh, he's really pulling it. But let's say that you're using it and it does that, and then you wind up moving again, and you continue to move. And if this was a particular pressure point, over time, you wind up moving a little bit, it winds up starting to separate, starts to come apart, and it will wind up eventually coming apart. So super glue also is a particular chemical setup, and some foams, if you use super glue on it, will actually eat the material. You'll apply it and it'll start to break it down. And so you really want to test, if you're going to use super glue on foam, you really need to test it. So the next up of what we have here is super glue on fabric. And as you can see, once again, it's pretty stiff. And we're going to give it a pull here. And as you can see, it is holding pretty well. But also, too, now we're going to work it. You know, let's say that you had this on, let's say like maybe a bodice or a bracer on your arm. Maybe you've made some pouches. Maybe it's holding a prop. The myriad of things that you do, it winds up getting moved. You pull the prop in and out. Oh, see? And it's starting to come loose a little bit. And, you know, especially if you have it like this, and if it's load bearing or whatnot, it's going to wind up pulling apart. And it doesn't have to pull apart a lot. Once it starts to go in certain places, remember, it's that constant movement. And so as you move, it works. Now, will super glue work on fabric? Absolutely, it would. I mean, I'm showing it to you. It is. But unfortunately, it just gets to a point right where, see, that was easy. And so you have to test. This is why I'm showing you this. Test, test, test. One of the cosmic rules of cosplay. But, oh, good Lord. So it gets weaker and it falls apart. I wouldn't recommend super glues on fabrics. Once again, like over here, like what I told you, super glue can wind up destroying and eating some things. So always test, test, test on spare pieces of fabric. This is, you know, now mind you, this is also pleathered. This isn't sewn. This isn't a fabric. That was something that I didn't have readily available, was some knitted fabric, like flannel or anything like that. I didn't have any spare pieces readily on hand when I was doing this. I'll probably do that in another video in the future, possibly, continuing this, because like I said, glues seem to be one of the biggest things for issues. And here we have the super glue on fabric with the vinyl strap. Once again, we can see it's very stiff, and we're going to give it a move. We're going to simulate some movement, rocking back and forth, walking through the dealer room, squatting down to meet kids and taking pictures with other cosplayers. You know, all that fun stuff that you do when you're at a con. And but it all simulates. Now, also another thing to keep in mind is if you're wearing a cosplay, if you ever wore a cosplay, what's something that you always do? You sweat. And that sweat does not help glue. Sweat is something I'm not simulating here because, well, I'm not going to run in place for 45 minutes and then wipe it all over me. I don't think you want to see that either. So, but as you see here, I worked it for a few seconds and it's just slowly coming apart now. And then once again, you know, we'd walk around the dealer room, eat some lunch, squat down, go to a panel, whatever, and then go back to, you know, doing our thing, and oh, the rest of it's just come off. So the problem with using super glue on fabric and then using it on something that's not as porous is, as we spoke before, it doesn't have enough surface to grab onto. It doesn't create a strong enough bond, and it creates a bit of that. So that's what you see here. So those are the super glues on various fabrics. In the next section, we're going to get to the School and Elmer's glue, which should be a little bit of a quick one. So I'll be right back. And welcome back. All right, here we go. So this is School and Elmer's glue, or white glue. Now it's clear. It comes in a myriad of colors now, but that's neither here nor there. But I see, especially younger cosplayers, use this material or use this adhesive. And once again, I have the straps on the foam and the straps on the fabric. And so this is the Elmer's glue or school glue, depending upon, because there's different brands, but it's all basically the same stuff. And right off the bat, if we take it and work it, you know, like we did with the other ones, just work that fabric and the strapping and the foam, and then there it goes. So a couple of problems with this is, just like in school, you would make a popsicle stick picture, maybe with some glitter and a few other things, and you'd use the school glue, and then you would take it home on a paper plate or a piece of construction paper, and you'd wave it around a little bit, you stick it on the refrigerator, and what always happened within a few days? Some parts of it, I mean, I didn't even barely do anything, and that one came off. So the problem with school glue, as an explanation, I don't want you to think that I'm just ragging on it, is it's extremely thick. It's extremely thick material, and or adhesive. I don't know why I keep saying material, but it's an extremely thick adhesive. And even when I used it on these two, what I did was I applied it, and then I laid them flat between two pieces of wood, and set my obsidian on top of it to give it firm pressure to allow it to set properly. But as you can see, it does not hold well. And I see this type of adhesive used a lot, like I said, from younger cosplayers, because that's what they have to use. Luckily, it's great if you're using it for like adhesing like paper pieces, like if you're making a part of your cosplay out of construction paper, or maybe you're going to try the paper mache route, right, where you're literally taking thin pieces of paper like newspaper or construction paper and literally dousing it in the school glue and then applying it to something, and just a gratuitous amount, because then at that point it's not about you holding the material together. When you use that amount, it's actually the glue setting becoming hard, using the material as a guide and a way to form it and shape it and give it volume. So that's why it works well on things like paper mache, but it doesn't work well as an adhesive to hold various materials together. It works well on itself, but it doesn't really work well on other materials. So I wanted, like I said, when I wanted to do this video, I wanted to be fair, and I wanted to show some of the most common adhesives that I see. And so there you go, school glue. Hello everybody, welcome back. Now we're going to go over Gorilla Glue. Now, Gorilla Glue is I'm pretty sure that some of you have seen the commercials. It's got a gigantic gorilla out there wandering around construction sites, gluing bricks and things together. And it's a really good adhesive. It's a really good glue for all types of things. A couple of things about the Gorilla Glue, though, is what a lot of people don't know is it takes water to activate. So when you use it, once again, the foam and the strap material, and then the fabric and the strap material, you have to apply some moisture, water, to one of the elements that you're putting together, and then apply the glue. And then you have to, like I used on the school glue, like I said before, I set it between two pieces of wood and set my heavy piece of obsidian on top of it and allowed it to set. So this is the this is the Gorilla Glue on the fabric and the strap piece. And just like we did with the other, I'm going, wow, ugh, man, good night. Yeah, that is very stiff. So once again, this is one of those things right where it's probably not practical. Imagine if you use this on two separate pieces along a seam, or maybe you were using it on some straps, and it's not very conforming by any stretch of the imagination. It is very, very hard, very, very stiff. If this was an episode of The Office, I think someone would say that's what she said. So it's gonna go. So we're gonna work it a little bit, and now we're gonna there it goes. So yep. So that's Gorilla Glue. So once again, like we said earlier, you know, the fabric and anything that's got some malleability to it, it works, it moves as you wear it or use it, depending upon the function of it. Sweat and everything else, you have one piece that moves and forms, and yet you have an adhesive that does not. It stays relatively stable. It's going to wind up breaking, cracking, and it's going to wind up losing its strength. So that's that. And now we have the Gorilla Glue and the strap. Now I haven't even worked it, and as you can see here, barely anything, but we're going to do it just to be fair. I don't want to pull too much and have them go, he gave Gorilla Glue a bad rap. You know, this Costume Corpsman's a jerk. We don't want that. So we're going to work it a little bit and see what works. So all right, so now we're going to go to it, and look at there. Now, like I did with the other one, I used some sandpaper and I roughed up this foam a little bit before I used it, because I did want to give it its best opportunity. But as you can see here, it's starting to separate and move. So you really have to be very thoughtful when you're building your costumes and your cosplays, especially on your pressure points, especially on the pieces that are going to have stress on them when you're using adhesives, because this is right where the failures happen, is when you wind up having those stress. So that's the Gorilla Glue. I'm going to be honest with you, this is one of the least, next to the school glue, Gorilla Glue and school glue are my two least advised adhesives to use when it comes to building cosplays and costumes. Now, I know some cosplayers out there, I've spoken to them, they swear by it. They they swear by the Gorilla Glue. It's what they use. It's the only thing that they use. There's not a lot of them, but there's some of them, and maybe there's a technique I don't know about. Maybe there's some secret to it that I've just never been privy to. But I do not know what that secret is. And like I said, I've been fixing and repairing and dealing with these things for quite a few years now. And this is pretty much what I see. So this is the Gorilla Glue, folks. So all right, the next section is rubber cement, which in my opinion is probably the most commonly used adhesive in cosplaying and costuming, and probably one of the best. So we'll get to that one in a few moments. Stay tuned. All right, hello everyone, welcome back. So now we're down to the rubber cement or rubber glue stuff. Now this, when you watch a good bit of costuming and cosplaying videos, how-tos and whatnot, rubber cement seems to be what a lot of people go to on building their armor, the foam, Warble, and a few other things. So once again, you can see I've got a few extra pieces here because I wanted to show you why rubber cement is looked at. So I've got the foam on the strap, and then I have fabric on fabric, foam on foam, and then fabric on strap. And so once again, it's stiff. But the thing about rubber cement is when you use it, you're supposed to put, well, you clean, of course, rough up the area with the sandpaper like I showed you before, and then you apply a thin layer of it on the two separate pieces of material, and then you set it aside for a few moments and you allow it to partially dry and become tacky. And when you do, it winds up creating a bond, which I'm literally, it's coming apart, but it's not coming apart easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of stretching here. Work it a little bit more. Any adhesive that you use will of course fail if you pull on it and work it a lot. I'm not saying it won't. I'm not saying there's an answer for everything. Oops, an answer for everything. So there we go. Okay, so that's the fabric and the strap. So as you see, it did come apart, but it took a lot more effort than the other one did. So, and even now when you push it back together, it's still got some adhesiveness to it. So this is foam on foam. This is what a lot of people, like I said, use, the costumers and cosplayers, when they build their foam pieces. The PCV, I think, is what it's called. Or the PVC foam, that thicker material. I'm using this thinner material just for practical purposes, but you know we're gonna work it. But like I said, you apply a thin amount to both pieces that you want to put together. You set it aside, and I can't even pull this apart. It's literally destroying itself. So, yeah, see, it broke before it separated. And the part that stayed on, I mean, the surface that's adheres to the other surface stayed on. So there's that. So now we're going to go over to the strap and foam material, and just like before, we're going to give it the workaround. We're going to give it a work go here. But rubber cement, it creates an incredible bond. I know there's probably technical terms. I'm pretty sure there's a chemist out there or a glue or adhesive expert that can speak more on this than I can. There we go. So It's literally ripping. So, yeah. So, once again, it creates bonds. All right, now we got the fabric on fabric. Now, this is also, it gets rigid, and we're going to pull on it, and as you can see, it pulls right apart. So, rubber cement, even though I like it and it works for a lot of things, it apparently works best on the foam. And it also seems to work good on where'd you go? Here we go. The straps. So this is what I always recommend. I recommend the rubber cement when you want to create and build your cosplays because of the stressor points, and it's really, really good. Now, I want to say a couple of things. The first thing I want to say is if I would have taken this and used the rubber cement just like I did, and then taken super glue and put it around the outside and let it set either using the quick set spray that I showed you earlier or just allow it to sit over time, including on this backside here, that would create a double bond. And that is actually a technique that I recommend for people when they want to put these type of straps on foam, metal, fabric, plastic, anytime that you wind up doing that. The rubber cement creates the total coverage bond, whereas the super glue will create the edge bond. And so you're doubling up on it. So if you're going to have something right where it's not going to be seen, you know, let's say like, you know, you're wearing it for a shield bracer or whatever, like before, the examples I gave previously, that would work. And I have used that technique, and I've had them stay, man, a very, very long time, if not until after the decommissioning of the cosplay. So that right there is the rubber cement. It gave me a bit of run for my money, and it will for you too. All right, so next up, we're going to show a little bit of different adhesive on a prop. This right here, and we will be back in a moment. All right, welcome back, everybody. This is going to be the last glue / adhesive example I'm going to give, and this is the prop to show what different glues work. So I have a little plastic cap from a some type of lubricant, but this is just a plastic cap, and it's adhered to this cheap foam pellet gun that I got from Goodwill. I put a piece of foam on here. This is with rubber cement, and then up here I put an old medicine over-the-counter bottle on with some super glue. So building props, a lot like building cosplays and costumes, you have to be mindful about a couple of different things. First off, let me stress, do not paint your parts before you put them together, because when you do, you will actually wind up using your adhesive and glue on the paint itself, and that is not stable because that paint will work loose, it will come off, and it's just generally not good. So you always want to start with the bare material. So when you're putting pieces and parts together, always start. Even if you hand paint, I know it can be a pain in the rear end to get into tight places, little areas. I completely and totally understand that. But unfortunately, if you paint first and then glue second, it's going to fail. I can almost guarantee it. 95% of the time, it's going to fail. The only time that it won't fail is if what you're adhering to the two pieces have zero stress, weight, or force conditions on it. So if you're gluing a cloud to the back of a gun after it's painted, then you should be okay. The cloud is just going to be great. But anything that's got any weight, heft, you know, you move it around, you shake it, you do all types of stuff with it, that paint is going to work itself loose. And then when the adhesive fails, what's going to happen is it's going to come off. You're going to look at the glue and you're going to see the paint stuck to the glue, which is something I see constantly and all the time. So what I have here is like I said, I have a pill bottle, and I used super glue to adhere it to the back of the gun, almost like you would put like a scope or maybe some type of fusion generator on the back of your weapon for whatever cosplay. Use your imagination here. I'm asking you to, and just work with me. So the reason why I did these different pieces and parts is to show why certain adhesives work, how to make them work better if it's what you're going to do. So this is what we're going to do in this part. So using just 2 fingers, I I barely did anything. And as you can see, that's the super glue. It's literally this just came right off. And I glued it on a flat plastic. There's nothing on it. There's no of this label, as you see here. This was a flat plastic, and it came off. And for a couple of reasons. The first one being, this was another reason you probably can't see it because, like I said before, I'm using a very poor quality webcam, which is my fault. But this is smooth. I did not rough this up before I affixed it to this gun. It's smooth. And I did not use the sandpaper on it like I should have to rough it up. But even if I would have and then still applied the super glue, what would have happened would be, if this was, like I said, something load bearing, a little bit heavy, whatever, it would work its way loose and come off. Super glue has a tendency, I don't know what it is. There are some super glues that are great. There's probably 40 to 50 different major brands of quote unquote super glues out there. And some of them work really great. Some of them barely work at all. Most of the ones that I've used, though, I would not use for anything low bear. Now, let's say I wanted this piece. Let's say I wanted to glue this piece onto here, and it's part of the frame, and I'm never going to handle it. I'm never going to work it or play with it. It's going to be affixed permanently. This would be a great place to use super glue, because you're going to have plenty of areas to apply the super glue all the way around. You don't have one fixed point right where all of the pressure is on it for super glue. So if you were putting this with these 3 large points of contact, super glue is going to be probably your best option for that. So now we're going to move over here to this little cap, and this is hot glue. I just used a couple of drops of hot glue in between it, and we're going to give it a work go here, and it feels pretty well on for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's got ridges. It's not smooth. And I am going to now give it, see that? Look what happened. You see absolutely no hot glue on there. It's all right there. And when you run your thumbnail over it, you can feel the grooves on it. So the hot glue worked because of the surface grooves of this particular point. If I would have used this on that, we would have had the exact same issue that we did with the super glue. So once again, roughing it up, putting it on, and putting it on there. Now, the other reason why it worked, this had no load bearing on it whatsoever, other than itself, which it's a very light piece. It just sat there. So, but if you would have moved, if it was heavy, it would have gone off, and it probably would have fallen off over time. So, light pieces and anything with a roughed up surface, super glue can be really good, but you don't want to use it for load bearing purposes. So, next up we have a piece of foam and rubber cement. Now, as we see here, I'm pulling that off. And it tore. Rubber cement held that on really well. It didn't hold it on as good as it could because, once again, if you look, I did not use the sandpaper to rough up that area before I applied that adhesive. If I would have done that and then applied this to it, it held on really good. Look, there's still a couple of pieces on there, but it would have held on a lot better. So, rubber cement is probably the best load-bearing material or load-bearing adhesive that you want to use on props. It creates a bond, and you can build. And once you put, if you use it properly, once you put those pieces together, it'll stay bonded in most cases. But that is the short glue adhesive tutorial for props. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope some of it was very insightful for you and maybe even answered a few questions. Maybe I didn't touch on something, or maybe you have some questions, or maybe I raised a couple of points that you didn't know about and you want more detail on, or maybe I missed some things completely. If I did, please leave comments down in the comments section. Let me know, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. If I don't have an answer for it, I'll see if I can't figure it out, or I could just address things in a future video. So, once again, have a great time cosplaying. Thank you so much for joining me. I am the Costume Corpsman, and you have a great day.